host of Heirloom Meals, a show about treasured family recipes, stories, and tips, savoring yesterday's traditions today. And today, we have a special treat and a great honor. Today, we have one of the finest food writers, memoirist, James Beard Award recipient, former New York Times restaurant critic, PBS show producer, and former Gourmet magazine editor, among her many titles, Ruth Reichl. For those who devour Ruth's writing, and in particular her food and family memoirs like I do, you will know that Ruth epitomizes heirloom meals. What you will hopefully learn today is how Ruth's mom influenced her in the most unexpected way. So don't touch that dial while we listen to our theme song, Chocolate Milk, by singer-songwriter Emily Muir. Hello, and if you're just joining us, I'm Carole Murko, host of Heirloom Meals Radio on WBCR-LP 97.7 FM, Great Barrington. My goal with this show is to invite people each week to share their memories about meals and recipes. I don't know about you, but I have not spoken to or met a single person that doesn't have a vivid food memory or who doesn't get nostalgic about a meal, a particular dish, or the process of making a meal with their mom, dad, grandmother, grandfather, aunt, uncle, or special family friend. Through each of my guests, I want to take you back to those memories. What's been really great about asking people to come on the show and share their family history through their experience with food and meals is that I feel like I'm doing a service to many. Most people have not taken the time on their own to reflect on their unique experience with food through their family heritage. And today's guest, Ruth Reichl, is truly the poster child for heirloom meals. She has spent her life chronicling her food and family memories and helping create food memories for others. So I'd like to say thank you from the bottom of my heart and welcome to my food hero and idol, Ruth Reichl.
It's great to be here.
So good to have you. So I'm just going to ask you, the mics are monodimensional, so speak directly into them.
Directly into them.
And,
there I go.
Okay, so, I've clearly read your book, so I feel like I have a leg up on some of the guests who might be listening, or our listeners. And, starting with, for me, it was Tender at the Bone, and then ending with Not Becoming My Mother, which you have a new title for that book. I apologize.
The title is now For You, Mom, Finally.
All right.
The paperback.
So, for the listeners who aren't as familiar with you as me, can you set the table for our listeners on how your family food experiences influenced you as a prominent food writer and foodie?
I wish I had brought Tender at the Bone because I would read the first story in it, but I will tell you the first story in Tender at the Bone is my mother waking my father up early in the morning, and my father was one of those people who didn't wake up easily, and he shuffles sleepily down the hall, and my mother puts something in his mouth and says, "Taste this." And my father, over the years, his description of what she had put in his mouth got better. But he described it as, moldy cat toes and spoiled chocolate and anchovies. And my father was the single most polite man I've ever met in my life. And he struggled to swallow it, couldn't, leaned over, spit it out into the sink, and then took the coffee pot, a percolator, and stuck the spout in his mouth just to try and get this horrible, to get this disgusting taste out of his mouth. And my mother watched him and she said, just as I thought, spoiled.
So, what I really appreciate that having, kind of read your book about your mom that you wrote for her 100th birthday, right?
Yes.
Was that you used to refer to those stories as Mim tales?
Mim tales. My mother's name was Miriam. She was called Mim. And I thought, for a long time, I thought that this was a Mim tale that I'd made up because it's so improbable. But both my brother and my husband said, it's a story my father told all the time. And the point of it was that my mother really couldn't tell I mean, she didn't know when food was spoiled. She was literally taste blind.
That's amazing. I've never heard of taste blind, but I like that.
and it totally formed my food habits, because when you have a parent like that, and I could tell you, I mean, the things that my mother fed us. I mean, I think the thing that for me was really the wake-up moment was, I must have been about 2.5, and my mother she used to take the ends of ice cream and pour them into one of those freezer trays. And it would be different kinds of ice cream, you know, and she'd just pour them in and refreeze them. And so what you ended up with was something that had this really bizarre fuzzy texture and had that disgusting refrigerator taste. And she gave it to me once when I was very young, and I spit it out. I said, "Oh, this is horrible." And Mom took a bite and said, "I don't know what you're talking about. It's perfectly delicious." And I realized at that age that she was different than me.
Right.
And that I had to be very careful about anything she fed me. And from that, I mean, I became a restaurant critic or a food critic at that point in my life. Where everything that I put into my mouth that my mother gave me, I tasted very carefully before swallowing to see, is this safe? Can I eat it? Is it disgusting? And what happens when that happens to you is that you become very focused on food. And so when other people were just sort of, you know, happily eating their peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, I was kind of noting the nuances of flavor in my mouth.
Wow, that's so incredible, and that's what I meant when I said that the way you came into being such a prominent foodie was not a typical way, like, you know, because when I first started reading your books, I was like, I can't believe this. And but now that you've stated it that way, it really does make sense that you really had to develop a heightened, kind of extrasensory perception in tasting food.
And not only that, I started cooking as soon as I could reach the stove standing on a stool, I said, let me cook, because it was just a better
survival.
idea. It was survival. And the thing about cooking very young is it's a great way to learn to cook, because everybody thinks you're so adorable that no matter what it is, they say, oh, this is wonderful, you're such a good cook, which encourages you to keep cooking.
More. Right.
And eventually
it's a confidence thing.
And you become a good cook very early. But
Mm-hmm.
it never occurred to me that something would go wrong or that I could make a mistake. I just,
Well, compared to your mom.
Exactly. Anything I made would be better.
But I think that's just a brilliant, kind of, opportunity that you took, out of, it's kind of making lemonade out of lemons. And but your stories are just so fantastic. Like I think from the same book, you tell the tale about the engagement party.
Oh.
And is that like well, you did tell the world, so I figured you could share it on the radio. But I mean that's a pretty intense story about.
Yes, this is my mother decided to give an engagement party for my brother and my future sister-in-law. My brother was much older than I am, is much older than I am. He's almost 14 years older than I am. So I was young at this point. And my mother decided two terrible things. One, she decided she was going to cater it herself, which my brother and I tried very hard to talk her out of, and which she would have none of. And secondly, she decided that it was going to be a benefit for UNICEF.
Which is hysterical.
And my brother said, wait a minute, you're going to make my future in-laws pay to come to our engagement party? To which my mother replied, oh, don't be so selfish. There are people all over the world who need help, and we're going to do a good thing.
We're going to do a 2 for 1.